The Galactic Council convened in its Grand Hall, a place where species from across the stars gathered to discuss the fate of the universe. The room was vast and intimidating, a shimmering dome of energy above casting a soft glow over the hundreds of delegates seated on their ornate thrones. The species present were among the oldest and most powerful in the galaxy, their technology beyond comprehension, their civilizations millennia old. Yet there was one topic that had the entire council murmuring with disdain: a new species called humans who had only recently begun to explore the stars from a backwater planet named Earth. The elites laughed among themselves at the idea of such a young and primitive species becoming a threat. Their galaxy-spanning empire had existed for eons, and they had seen countless species rise and fall, but none as laughable as humans. The representatives of the Aeroliths, an ancient race of telepathic beings, spoke first. With a voice that echoed through the hall, cold and disdainful, they described humanity's progress as nothing more than a brief blip on the galactic scale. Their homeworld was little more than a dust ball in the far reaches of space, barely capable of interstellar travel. Their technology was primitive at best, their social structures chaotic and unstable. How could such a species ever hope to pose a threat to the likes of the Galactic Elites? The Aeroliths scoffed at the very notion, and as they spoke, the other species nodded in agreement. The Crixians, an insectoid species with centuries of spacefaring experience, agreed with a hissed chuckle, their mandibles clicking with amusement. Their leader, a towering figure with glowing green eyes, mocked the humans' attempts to send a probe to their closest star. Their scientific endeavors were laughable, they declared. Humanity's grasp of the cosmos was weak and misguided, like children fumbling in the dark. The Tevran Collective, a race of hyper-intelligent silicon beings, spoke last. Their voices, a harmonious symphony of calculated thought. They warned of the humans' potential, but the warning was not one of fear, it was one of curiosity. They noted how humans had survived against impossible odds, how they had outlasted predators and threats on their homeworld far longer than any other species. They pointed to the resilience of the human spirit, their unyielding will to survive despite all odds. But even the Tevrans were dismissive of any notion that humanity could overcome the galactic hierarchy. The council had been built upon this ancient order that had held the universe in check for eons, where might and knowledge had always been revered. And who could challenge such an order? What were humans but an insignificant blip to be crushed like all the others before them? The council debated the fate of the humans for hours, their laughter ringing through the hall, their arrogance blinding them to the truth that something was stirring deep within humanity, a force that could not be so easily dismissed. They had no idea that the very thing they mocked was already beginning to rise, and soon their mockery would turn to fear as the humans began to uncover their true potential. Humanity had been underestimated once before, and it would not forget again. In the shadows of the galaxy, far from the prying eyes of the Galactic Elites, humanity had been quietly preparing for the day when they would no longer be the underdogs. The United Earth government had initiated a project unlike any other, a secret weapon designed to protect their people and assert their place in the cosmos. At first, it seemed like a pipe dream, an impossible feat, a ship capable of taking on the might of the Galactic Elites themselves. But humans had a tendency to do the impossible, and they had spent years secretly building the prototype ship in a forgotten corner of space. One of their best engineers, Darlara Kencho, a brilliant scientist with a passion for the unknown, had spearheaded the project. Her team had worked tirelessly day and night, refining the designs, incorporating alien technology recovered from a long-forgotten shipwreck on the edge of their star system. The ship was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's survival instinct, of their unwillingness to be crushed by those who saw them as lesser. Dr. Kencho's creation was a marvel of engineering. Its outer hull was made of a newly discovered material resistant to nearly every known form of weaponry. Inside the ship housed a cutting-edge AI system, Far beyond anything the elites could ever imagine, the AI was not just a tool, it was an evolving consciousness able to adapt and learn at an exponential rate within days of activation. It was already anticipating potential threats and formulating strategies that even the most advanced minds in the galaxy would struggle to comprehend. The first time the ship was fully operational, its creators watched in awe as it easily navigated through asteroid fields, avoiding impacts with an agility that was unheard of for a vessel of its size. But the real test came when they made their first jump into deep space. The ship's engines far surpassed anything humanity had ever seen before they pushed the ship to its limits. But instead of the catastrophic failures they expected, it powered through every obstacle, as if it were designed specifically to exceed all limitations. And that was just the beginning. As the ship's AI grew smarter, its capabilities expanded. It began integrating offensive and defensive systems from ancient alien artifacts recovered from distant worlds, a multi-layered shield system adapted to deflect and absorb energy from the most powerful weapons in existence, a railgun system capable of launching projectiles at nearly the speed of light, and finally a hyperdrive that allowed for faster-than-light travel. With pinpoint accuracy, the humans had built a ship capable of challenging even the mightiest of empires, and they did it in secret, while the Galactic Elites mocked them, unaware that this very weapon would soon pierce their arrogant walls of invincibility. The day came when the prototype was ready for its first mission, a direct strike into the heart of the Galactic Elites' territory. They were no longer waiting for the elites to come for them. They were going to bring the fight straight to their doorstep. With everything they had, the humans were done being underestimated. It was time to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. And as the ship broke through the edge of the elite space, their first target came into view, an ancient fleet of warships hovering above a forgotten moon. The humans did not hesitate. The time for mockery had ended. The time for war had begun. The moment the human ship entered the elite space, all eyes were on it. The galaxy's most powerful and ancient empires had been watching humanity for years, expecting their rise to be nothing more than a brief flicker in the darkness. But as the human ship closed in on the fleet of the Crixian warlords, the atmosphere shifted. Something changed in the air. The elites felt it, a deep unease that crept up their spines and gripped their hearts. They had underestimated humanity in every way possible, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. The human ship moved with a grace and precision the elites had never seen before. It was as if it knew every move the Crixian ships would make before they did. The first salvo came from the human ship's railguns, a barrage of projectiles that tore through the Crixian warships like paper. The Crixians tried to retaliate, their weapons firing in rapid succession, but their shots bounced off the human shields with no effect. The Crixians grew frantic, sending wave after wave of reinforcements to bear down on the human vessel. But it was too late. The humans adapted too quickly. The ship's AI calculated every angle, every possible counter before the Crixians even made their move. Within minutes, the human ship had destroyed half the Crixian fleet and sent the rest into retreat. The elites watched in stunned silence as the last of the Crixian ships flood into the void. Their pride shattered, their arrogance crushed. The human ship was a harbinger of destruction, and the elites could do nothing to stop it. But the humans weren't done yet. The ship's sensors detected the approach of reinforcements. The elite aerolith warships had arrived, a fleet led by the very warlord who had dismissed humanity's potential at the Galactic Council meeting. The aeroliths moved with deadly purpose. Their ships were ancient, and their weapons were powerful, but the humans had learned from their first encounter. They adapted faster than any race the elites had ever seen, and this time they were ready. The battle was fierce. The aerolith ships launched coordinated strikes, but the human ship maneuvered with an agility that baffled the aerolith commanders. Every shot that they fired missed. Every tactic they deployed was countered before it even began. The human AI fed them data faster than they could process it. The human ship tore through the aerolith fleet one ship at a time, a flawless execution of military strategy and sheer willpower. The battle ended within hours. The aerolith fleet lay in ruins, and their warlord was forced to retreat into the depths of space, humiliated and broken. The message was clear: humanity was no longer a joke, no longer a lesser species that could be mocked or dismissed the elites had seen the true potential of the humans, and it terrified them. They had never imagined that such a young species could possess this kind of ingenuity or power. The tides were changing, and for the first time in millennia, the Galactic Elites found themselves on the defensive. The humans had struck first, and they had won a victory that no one in the galaxy would ever forget. The age of mockery had ended, and a new age had begun. The news of the human victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Galactic Elites had never known fear like this. Before, it was unthinkable. How could a primitive species like humanity have defeated the Crixians and the Aeroliths so easily? They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The once imposing galactic empire began to unravel as species that had once been loyal to the elites began to question their power. Some of the lesser races saw humanity's rise as an opportunity to challenge the old order, while others feared the wrath of the humans and began to distance themselves from the elites. Even the Tevrans, the most calculating and intelligent of the ancient species, were not immune to the shock. They had been the ones to warn the elites of humanity's potential, but they never imagined the humans could move so quickly. The Tevran collective began analyzing the human ship and its advanced technologies, but they quickly realized there was no way to replicate what the humans had done. They had been outpaced, outsmarted, and outclassed. The human response was not just about superior weapons or advanced technology. It was about the humans themselves, the way they adapted, the way they fought, not with blind aggression, but with cunning determination. Every move they made was calculated, every victory was earned, and it became clear to anyone watching that humanity was no longer playing by the rules of the old galaxy. The elites attempted to regroup and reinforce their fleets, but their efforts were disjointed and scattered. Their once unified front was now fractured. The Crixians and Aeroliths had suffered devastating losses, and neither was willing to sacrifice any more ships for a war they no longer believed in. The Galactic Elites began sending messages to Earth, but the humans were no longer interested in negotiation. They had grown tired of pleading for recognition, tired of waiting for the galaxy to take them seriously. Humanity was done being dismissed, and now it was time for the elites to feel what it was like to be insignificant. The United Earth government issued a direct message to the Galactic Council, demanding an end to the war. The message was simple and powerful: surrender or face extinction. The Galactic Elites hesitated. They had faced countless enemies over the centuries, but never one like this. They were unsure how to respond. The fear they felt was palpable. They had never been forced to fight like this before. Their fleets could no longer match the speed and adaptability of the humans. The elites knew that they couldn't win, but they refused to bow before the humans. The arrogance that had defined them for millennia still lingered, but the cracks were showing, cracks that could not be ignored. The humans had proved themselves, and now they stood at the precipice of something greater, something that would change the galaxy forever. They were no longer just an underdog. They were the predators, and the elites were the prey. Humanity had taken the first step into a new era, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had kept their most potent weapon hidden from the elites, a secret buried beneath layers of misinformation and careful deception. The true power of their rise was not just in their technology, but in an ancient artifact recovered from the depths of space, a relic from a long-lost civilization, one that had been destroyed before any of the current galactic empires even existed. The artifact was discovered during an exploration mission near the edge of the solar system, on a planet long thought to be dead. Its surface had been scorched by an ancient war, and its atmosphere had been stripped away by time. But beneath the surface, the humans found the object buried deep within a forgotten temple, an enormous crystalline structure the size of a mountain. The artifact was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Its surface hummed with an energy that seemed almost alive. Its purpose was unknown, but the humans were determined to uncover its secrets. Over the course of several years, they studied it tirelessly, their scientists and engineers working alongside military strategists to understand how it could be used and what it could mean for their survival. What they discovered was nothing short of extraordinary. The artifact was a gateway to a vast network of knowledge and power, a repository of ancient alien technology, From a species that had been far more advanced than any civilization that currently existed in the galaxy, the humans learned to harness its power and integrated it into their ship systems in ways that the elites couldn't even begin to comprehend. The energy it produced was pure and limitless, capable of fueling entire fleets without the need for conventional resources. Its computational power was vast enough to simulate entire universes at the quantum level, and its weapon systems could vaporize entire fleets with a single burst. Humanity had unlocked the key to the very forces that governed the cosmos, and now they wielded it as their own. The human ship, outfitted with the artifact's technology, became a living weapon, a vessel that no enemy could match. It could bend energy at will, creating shields that could deflect the most powerful blasts, while charging its own weapons to levels that seemed impossible. Its AI became far more than a simple tool. It evolved into a consciousness that learned from every battle, adapting and improving with each encounter. The humans had not only found a weapon, they had discovered a force that could reshape the galaxy, and with it they would forge a new future. The first time the artifact-powered ship entered battle, it obliterated an entire fleet of Tevran warships with a single wave of energy. The Tevrans attempted to retaliate, but their weapons were useless against the power of the artifact. The humans fought with a calm determination. Their strategy was precise and brutal. The artifact allowed them to anticipate every move their enemies made and counteract it with flawless precision. The elites watched in horror as their fleets were wiped out one by one. They could not understand how the humans had gained such an advantage. The artifact was something they had never seen before. It was beyond their understanding, beyond their reach. They had laughed at the humans, dismissed them as insignificant. But now it was clear humanity was not to be underestimated. They were no longer a species on the edge of extinction. They were a force that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, and the elites knew they had no way to stop them. As the humans continued their relentless march through the galaxy, a wave of fear began to spread across the once invincible Galactic Elites. Their prideful confidence crumbled as quickly as their fleets had been obliterated. One by one, the ancient and mighty species that had ruled for millennia began to realize something they had never anticipated. They were not the apex predators they had once thought themselves to be. They were the prey, and humanity was hunting them down with a ruthlessness they could not match. The Crixians, once fierce and unyielding, began to pull back their forces. The Tevrans, once the most calculating and strategic of species, began to scatter their fleets in a desperate attempt to avoid human confrontation. The Ereliths, once considered the wisest of all races, began to question their own survival. Their telepathic minds could not fathom how humans had risen so quickly, how they had adapted so rapidly to every challenge. The elites were in disarray, no longer united by their overconfidence, but splintered by fear and uncertainty. The most terrifying aspect for them was the sheer unpredictability of humanity. Unlike any other species in the galaxy, humans did not follow the expected patterns of war. They were not bound by tradition or the rigid strategies the elites had used to crush lesser species. Instead, humanity adapted on the fly. Their ingenuity and resourcefulness made every battle a new challenge, and the elites struggled to keep up with their unpredictable tactics. They no longer knew what to expect from humanity, no longer knew how to fight them. The humans were quick to seize on this vulnerability. With every victory, their forces grew bolder. They pushed further into uncharted space, breaking through the borders that had once been sacred to the elites. They conquered systems previously thought to be impossible to reach even for the most advanced fleets. The momentum was undeniable. The elites scrambled to respond, but every move they made was countered with terrifying speed and efficiency. The Galathians, a race of energy beings, attempted to enter the fray using their abilities to manipulate energy fields, but the humans had already figured out how to neutralize their powers with the artifact they had unlocked. Humanity was now a force capable of disrupting the most basic laws of physics. The once proud elites began to turn on one another in desperation. The Crixians blamed the Ereliths for underestimating humanity. The Ereliths blamed the Tevrans for not recognizing the danger sooner. Even the ancient Malilian Empire, which had once stood as an equal to the elites, began to back away from the conflict, not willing to risk annihilation to save an empire that was already crumbling. Fear had taken root, and it was spreading like wildfire. The elites did not know what to do. They had never known weakness in their ranks. They had never faced an enemy they could not conquer. The situation became worse when the first of the neutral species began to offer their support to the humans in exchange for protection from the elites. The Cartheri, one of the most advanced but pacifist races in the galaxy, sent emissaries to Earth offering to ally with humanity to help fight against the elites. Other species followed suit, seeing in the humans a strength and determination that they had never seen before. In the ancient powers that ruled the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted, and the elites were no longer in control. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. And as the elites struggled to hold their empire together, humanity began to rewrite the rules of the galaxy. The pressure on the Galactic Elites mounted with each passing day. The fear that had once been a whisper became a roaring crescendo as their fleets fell and their alliances dissolved. The elites had always prided themselves on their invulnerability, their belief that no force in the galaxy could challenge them. But now the undeniable truth settled in their minds. Humanity was not just a threat, they were the end of everything. The elites had built desperate, and running out of options, they began to send emissaries to Earth, messages of peace and reconciliation, sent through diplomatic channels and secret communications. They begged the humans for mercy, offering unimaginable riches and technology. In exchange for an end to the war, they offered entire sectors of the galaxy to be ruled by humanity, offering their most advanced weapons and star systems as tokens of goodwill. But the humans had no interest in bargaining. Their demands were clear. Humanity had suffered for too long under the yoke of the elites, and they were no longer interested in empty promises and token gestures. The message from Earth was simple: surrender or face annihilation. The humans were done with diplomacy and treaties. They had fought for their place in the galaxy, and now they would take it. No one would escape their reckoning. The emissaries from the elites arrived on Earth in secret, thinking that perhaps they could negotiate a peaceful resolution. But when they were brought before the human leaders, they were met with cold and unforgiving eyes. The humans did not need their promises or their technology. They had already surpassed anything the elites could offer. The emissaries tried to appeal to the humans' sense of mercy, pleading for their survival. But the humans were beyond such sentiments. Now they had seen what the elites had done to their world, and countless others. The suffering and the destruction wrought by the arrogance of these ancient empires could not be forgiven. Humanity had not fought this war for justice or for honor. They fought because they had been forced to survive, and in the process they had discovered their true strength. And now they would show the galaxy that nothing would stand in their way. They gave the emissaries one final chance to deliver their ultimatum to the Council: surrender or face complete destruction. The emissaries left Earth broken and defeated. Their words fell on deaf ears in the Galactic Council. They could not understand how a species so young, so seemingly fragile, could be so resolute in their demands. They had never seen this level of determination before. The Council deliberated for hours, torn between resistance and surrender. The thought of relinquishing power to a species so new was unthinkable to them. But the humans were no longer asking, they were commanding. The time for begging was over. The time for negotiations was past. The elites realized they had no choice but to either submit or be eradicated. The galaxy had already begun to change, and no amount of pleading could turn back the tide of humanity's rise. They were no longer the underdog. The galaxy now had to accept that humanity was the new power, the new order, and the elites would have to bend to it or be swept away entirely. As the ultimatum spread across the galaxy, it was met with mixed reactions. Some species still clung to the old ways, their pride and arrogance blinding them to the reality that humanity had already surpassed them. Others whispered of rebellion and defiance against the rising power of Earth. But the truth was undeniable. Humanity was unstoppable. The Galactic Elites had no answer for the weapon they had mocked. The human ship, powered by the artifact, now seemed like a living entity capable of bending the laws of the universe to its will. The humans had become something more than a species. They were a force of nature, and the elites could no longer ignore them. The Council's decision came quickly, and it was unanimous. The elites would surrender, but their pride refused to do so unconditionally. They would make one last attempt to preserve some form of their former glory. They decided to offer a grand gesture, a final show of power to assert their control, even as they bowed to humanity's might. A fleet of the most powerful warships in the galaxy was gathered under the command of the elites, their most advanced weapons ready to launch at Earth. As a final test of the human resolve, they intended to show the galaxy that even in surrender they still had the power to destroy humanity in one swift strike. But the humans were already prepared. When the elites made their move, humanity responded with cold precision. The ships that had once ruled the stars were no match for the artifact-powered ship humanity had built. The battle was over before it began. The human vessel sliced through the elite fleet like a hot knife through butter. Their weapons fired, but their blasts had no effect. The shields of the human ship absorbed every blow and returned it with devastating force. The elites had sent their most powerful ships to fight, but they were nothing in the face of the humans' true power. Within hours, the once mighty fleet was reduced to debris floating in the void, and the remaining elites who had survived the attack flowed into the depths of space, their hearts broken, their spirits crushed. They realized too late that their time had passed. The age of the elites was over, and humanity had claimed the galaxy for itself. The surrender came not in the form of speeches or gestures, but in the complete collapse of the elites' empire. Their resources were stripped away, their fleets shattered and scattered, and their control over the galaxy was no more. The humans had taken everything from them. And now there was nothing left for the elites to do but accept their fall from grace. The once feared powers of the galaxy were no longer capable of challenging humanity, and the elites found themselves without an ally in sight. The galaxy was now firmly under the control of the humans, and there was no one left to stop them. The council dissolved, and the factions that had once dominated the stars were left to lick their wounds and reevaluate their place in the universe. The humans had not only defeated them, they had changed the very structure of the galaxy. They had become the new power, the new order, and no one would dare challenge them again. The rise of humanity was complete. The age of the elites was over. The galaxy had entered a new age, and humanity stood at the forefront of it. All the elites were shattered, their once mighty empires reduced to rubble, their voices drowned out by the relentless march of humanity's progress. Where once there had been arrogance, now there was silence. The other species watched with a mix of awe and fear as humanity took control of the galaxy. The old power structures crumbled, and in their place humanity built something new, something different. No longer would the galaxy be ruled by ancient empires whose thirst for power had led them to exploit and oppress weaker species. Humanity forged alliances based on equality and mutual respect. They offered technology and knowledge to species that had once been oppressed or ignored by the elites. They reached out to former enemies, offering peace and cooperation rather than domination. The galaxy slowly began to heal under the leadership of humanity. But even as the dust of war settled, the scars remained. Humanity had fought to earn its place in the stars, and they would not forget the cost of that fight. They had not only defeated their enemies, but had also confronted their own flaws and limitations, and emerged stronger for it. The leaders of Earth knew that their rise was not just about defeating the elites, it was about proving to themselves and to the galaxy that they could rise above the darkness and be something greater, something that could stand for justice and compassion, as well as strength and resilience. Humanity began to rebuild the damaged systems of the galaxy, focusing on the needs of the many rather than the few. They reformed trade routes, bringing resources to planets that had long been neglected and developing technologies that allowed for faster and more efficient communication and travel. The once divided species of the galaxy began to come together under the banner of humanity's new vision. The Galactic Federation was born, a council of diverse races working together to ensure peace and prosperity for all. No longer would one species dominate the rest, all would be equal, and all would contribute to the greater good. The elites faded into obscurity, no longer relevant in a galaxy where unity and progress were the goals. The last remnants of their former empire were dismantled, and their leaders were exiled or left to wander the vast emptiness of space. Humanity had shown that the old ways were no longer viable, that the universe could not be ruled through fear and subjugation, but through cooperation and mutual respect. The new order was not without its challenges, but humanity was determined to prove that their victory was not just a triumph over the elites, but a new beginning for the galaxy. They had earned their place in the stars, and they would not let it slip away. Humanity's legacy would not be one of tyranny or destruction, but of hope and opportunity for all the species of the galaxy. Knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in their history, one where humanity would guide them into a future of peace and prosperity, a future where the lessons of the past would never be forgotten, but would be used to build a better tomorrow. And so, with the galaxy united under their leadership, humanity looked to the stars not as conquerors, but as stewards of a new age.